Driving an automatic Miata is like f***ing with a condom on.
With 2 condoms on.
They're just
one condom is safe, 2 is just stupid.
All right, how do we want to do it? We're talking about automatic Miata. This! No, this? I think that there's a real case to be made that an automatic Miata that becomes modified is actually losing some of what makes an automatic Miata valid.
It's fine exactly the way it is, and it's for a very specific person. It's for somebody that's honest with themselves, with the ownership of an automatic Miata, knowing that they're not gonna be able to do all the fun Miata things with it.
We're doing nice sway bars, we're doing nice coilovers, you know, it's very simple. It should just make the car handle a little tighter. It should make turning a little more responsive. It should make it a little bit. What's its mileage? 66,000?
66,000
Yeah, okay,
miles.
so it's getting its 60,000 mile service, which is timing belt, water pump, front main seal, just cam seals, basic stuff. We're just gonna give it a little once over, make sure it's gonna continue to not leak any oil, make sure the timing belt is fresh. I'm gonna go do engine stuff, and
we're gonna be on suspension and everything.
Cool, and then we'll fucking, I've got it to move like 3 millimeters, dude. I'm literally like almost putting my entire body weight against this here.
Hose expert here. Let me give her a whirl.
Fucking resident hose expert, you've been married.
Absolutely, that's a successful hose expert right there. That's endgame.
I did like fucking garbage. The ATF in my mouth. That makes like tongue tingle, what the fuck? It's weird.
So if you're taking out a bolt that has a lot of tension on it, that is like, in this example, the bottom bolt for the strut assembly, it's gonna have that whole spring's pressure on it as it's coming out, and you'll get to a point where you're out of the threads, but the bolt doesn't wanna pull out. And in that situation, I take the open end of a wrench, and I slide it behind the head as I'm pulling out. I just give it a little bit of pressure, just like that.
Head is important. In this case, the BP4W in the NB1 has a better flowing head than the NB2s. So even though you have VVT on the NB2s, and technically that ends up making slightly more power, but also they have a little more compression ratio that also adds a little more of that power. I would rather take an NB1 head, which is why you don't unclog one toilet and call yourself a plumber, but you give head one time and all of a sudden you're gay.
So right here, I'm making a bomb. People give them a lot worse rap than they're actually deserving of. I've never had this style explode on me, but that's because I use it right. Make sure, for God's sake, that at the very least, these hooks right here are all the way around the coils of the spring, and then use these safeties. If you see right here, they have a little like sprung ball in them. Just make sure that they're locked in. Go evenly on both sides. Don't crank one all the way down and then go to the other. Just be safe. You should be using face protection.
You know, who am I to judge? Who am I to say whether or not you should have an accessory belt? I mean, ultimately, accessory belts are government plants, you know? It's like birds, it's like the drones, man. It's like
You missed a pun.
What was the pun?
Like alternatorly, like you're talking about electricity and power.
Get out of here,
The method that I use is point in a safe direction and stand on it. It's, again, these are just things that you want to follow. You don't, like, it's not really a bomb. It's not that bad. Just point it in the directions you don't want things to get hit and put a boot on top of it. And then just blast that off. It should just fall right off.
You just said that you should point them in the direction of things that you don't want to hit. I think you want to do the opposite of that.
Oh, true, yeah, actually, yeah. If you have insurance, point this at the most expensive car in your shop.
Like,
if
do
not,
you have a child that you don't want anymore?
yeah, life insurance. You have an uncle that's getting a little old, have him compress a spring for you. If you've done everything correctly, when you take this nut off, it's not gonna launch at Mach Jesus. Beautiful, just like that. You should have absolutely no drama when using one of these. If you do have drama, you're using it wrong.
I know some people that don't have access to like the right set of tools can find these water pump pulleys can be a little annoying to remove because when you try and put just a normal wrench on it, as you try to turn the bolts, it'll spin it. One trick that you can do is you can grab a serpentine belt. This is when it would still be on the car. And then wrap it around like that and then pinch it. And when you do that, it should give you enough friction against it that you could remove the pulley. But in this case, an impact will work just as good. So removing a crank pulley can be kind of a pain in the ass because the bolts are torqued to about 160 foot-pound and often they just get fried on there. Some people will Loctite them on there. It can be difficult to gain access to remove them, especially if you have a radiator and fan still in the way here. There's not that much room to just get a big impact in here, or you might not even have a big impact. So I'm gonna show you a trick to removing these. It's really easy and works very consistently. So this is gonna be cool. It's called a starter bump trick. Now a starter generates a lot of torque by taking a wrench, putting it on remove, putting it on the crank pulley here, and then bumping it up against the frame on this side. Now what's gonna happen is this bolt is gonna be held here while the engine rotates around it, causing this bolt to get loosened. A very important step to doing this is when you're doing this, come over to your fuse box over here and remove the fuse for fuel injection. That way the car doesn't start. Last thing you wanna do is you wanna be in there and the car starts. I mean, in this case, it doesn't matter because the spark plugs are off here, but just in general, you should always do that. You don't want fuel being sprayed in there regardless. Go ahead, Skylar, and just give it a tap. That's it, that's it. Now your crank pulley's loose. A good trick to know, this works on basically any car. The only thing that you should note is that if you have something like a Honda, certain Honda motors will spin counterclockwise, so the opposite way, so you'll have to brace it with actually it on the on position and then against the other side. So keep that in mind, do your research ahead of time, but for Miatas, very easy to do. The best way to remove these, in my opinion. God damn. You still doing rear suspension back there?
Yeah, the collars on these, you need to push the axle in for the collar of the coilover to actually go around it.
Bruh.
Unless we compressed them and then put the collars up at ride height. But since we put the collars all the way down, once it's in the car, then you have to sneak the collars past the axle to get it back up. So instead of fighting it, I'm going to move it.
So if you're like me and you ate a lot of glue as a kid, you're probably pretty familiar with these. Good trip? What the a good trip to... No, my mouth tastes like glue now. A good trick to use is to use a glue stick and glue your gaskets in place when you're assembling things. This just kind of keeps them from sliding around when you're doing some assembly. So just a little bit of perp drank on that shit. Get it all leaned up there. You just smack that bitch on there. And now you can just drop your water pump on and you don't have to worry about this moving around as much. So, you know, easy peasy. Doing a timing belt job on a Miata is not very hard. However, there is possibility of fucking something up, and that's removing the front main seal. So that's the seal that's right around the crankshaft, right here on the oil pump of the engine. Now to be able to remove this seal, you're gonna need to be able to pry it out or pull it out. The most optimal way to do that is to take a very small drill bit, drill through the very center of the seal itself, screw in a screw, and then use that screw to pull it out. Now, if you go off center and you drill and you accidentally tap into the wall, either of the crankshaft, which is even worse, or the wall of the oil pump here, you're gonna create an oil leak. It's just what it is. That shouldn't dissuade you from doing it because you should still replace the front main seal when it's bad. But be careful. I'm gonna show you how to do it here. Reasonably, the smaller the better. You wanna make sure that when you're drilling it, you are getting that absolutely dead center of the seal itself and that it doesn't start to track one way or another. Inside of that seal, there is a rubber outside and a metal inside. You're gonna have to drill through that metal part. Make sure it doesn't wander when it does that. Don't just full send it. See, it's trying to wander, but it's worth it to take it slow and do it right. Screw in. And then pull the seal, and just like that, that's how you pull it. What you're gonna see here is that the screw is into the center of the front main seal here, but it is not penetrating through the side into the oil pump, and it's not through the side into the crankshaft here. So that's really what you wanna see. At the point that you're starting to dig into the crankshaft here, you'd see marks on it, and you would see that this would be, obviously the screw would be pointing out here. That's a bad day. Don't do that. Do it right. Make sure it's in the center. Make sure your screw isn't too wide. It's not that hard. It's just, you gotta be careful.
Don't cheap out on crescent wrenches, ladies and gentlemen.
No, that's true. Because seriously, cheap ones are one size fits all.
Yeah, it will do it every time. That's how the video starts.
Yeah.
Bravo Dark going nut. What kind of name is Nut? Soap, you didn't juju on the fucking beat, Soap.
Soap, you didn't pop it lock.
Soap, you didn't take the reverse abortion pill, Soap. Mission failed. We'll get it next time.
Wait, fuck. How am I gonna tighten this crank pulley? It's an automatic. I can't just put it in gear. I can't just put it in fucking... So, okay, here's a problem. In a manual transmission car, it's very easy to tighten the crank pulley because you just put it in 5th gear and then you pull the e-brake and you step on the brake. And usually that's plenty that you can use the force of the brakes holding it to hold the crankshaft steady. In this case, this is an automatic Miata. I guess I have to chalk the torque converter?
If there's an access, then yeah, you can get it on like one of the flywheel teeth. And you could just hold it there like that. If there's not, you could also, even in drive, that I imagine the torque converter in these is so light, you're not going to get it to lock up.
Huh, okay. I gotta think about how I'm gonna do that. So we were running into the issue of we couldn't use the transmission to hold the crank steady to tighten the crank pulley. So I went ahead and I took apart the crank pulley and I made a little tool that will just bolt onto this. So now we put the crank boss onto the crankshaft here. And then we'll put the tool here and then we'll turn the engine over and it will brace itself against the water pulley neck. This is how Flying Miata made a tool for it already, but we didn't want to wait to order one in. So I just made one myself and it's pretty easy. So. $154. Bada bing, bada boom. Easy enough.
There's just something lacking in the experience about it. However, do they get more hate than they deserve? Low throttle, it doesn't feel like it's sluggish. Like it feels like the transmission does try and keep it like at a point where, it's got a little pep to it.
Yeah.
I think that it starts to kind of fall apart a little bit, like once you're trying to actually go. If you're trying to like really give it some gas and bring anything out of it, it kind of cucks you a little bit.
Yeah,
like
it's the middle of the gear.
It's warmed up. It's foot on the floor, downshifts. Revs to 6.5 is where it shifts. So. I guess I was a little surprised the first time I drove a stock Miata with how quickly it shifts, though. It's pretty fast. Like
the shift feel of the transmission is solid. It doesn't feel like it's kind of just easing into gears or anything like that. It's hitting the gears. It's staying in the gears. There's no question about that.
The other obvious downside is that it's a 4-speed auto. I mean, you have 1 or 2 less gears than with a manual. So like, you're not going to be able to stay in that same power band the way that you can with a manual transmission because there's just less gears. There's going to be wider gaps between them. So thanks, Gary, for letting us drive your Miata. It is a nice car. Like, right. I know we're talking like a little bit of trash because it is an automatic, but at the end of the day, it is still a well-kept Miata. That's bone stock. And frankly, I would rather have a well-kept automatic than like a really clapped-out manual. That vibration at idle, man.
Yeah, it feels just like a motor mount. Like if there was a bad motor mount in any other car.
I don't know. I know people say that Miatas are like the slowest cars in the world. They're not.
I've driven slower.
They are really not the slowest cars ever. Like, yeah, for a sports car, it does feel like a little sluggish, but if you're not trying to go 100 miles an hour, it's fine. Like, they're geared so short that like getting up to 60 never really feels like you're like fighting for it. It's going up hills that you really start to feel the lack of torque. With an older car like this, like even an automatic, it's still more connected to the road than any modern car really feels. It's the lack of safety features.
Definitely still feels like a Miata.
Yeah.
Even with the auto, it's not like that's the manual of the Miata is not the entire soul of it.
It's a lot of the soul of it.
It is a lot, but it's not all of it. It's not the whole thing.
Put it in reverse.
Yeah. First impressions, reverse is stupid. All right, I'm going to pose a question again. Who is the automatic Miata for?
Cowards?
Yeah.
Cowards and simpletons? No, that's mean.
That is mean.
No, the real answer is that an automatic Miata is for somebody that's never driven a sports car before. An automatic Miata is for people that play on the easiest difficulty setting when they play the game.
They want the experience, but they don't want to put the work in.
There you go. Now we're finding it. I think that's who an automatic Miata is.
Yeah. Kia, no hood.
I think it's stolen.
Yeah,
One window down that's definitely busted out. Yeah. You know, like people say that that manuals are theft deterrent. For a Miata, it might be the one car where it's actually a theft deterrent to have an automatic.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I don't want to drive that piece.
Oh, and then they look inside, they're like, oh yeah, fuck, let's steal this Miata. Oh, what the fuck is this shit?